Bumgarner, and it's not, 2017 Kimbrel.
Right. It was 14 for the Giants.
So, I mean, it is kind of hard to get those things out of your head. But I do kind of like Bumgarner. He looked kind of ridiculous when he went after that Muncy from the Dodgers for hitting the home run. I mean, he kind of looked, like a petulant child. But I mean, a guy with his resume that has a little piss and vinegar about him, I don't really have a problem with that.
Now, how long? I mean, coming over for I think he's a career National Leaguer. I mean,
he is.
Interleague notwithstanding, how long does it generally take pitchers, especially since they're only pitching once every handful of days, starters, to acclimate to the new league?
That's a good question, and I think it also comes down to, who has the edge. Does the edge go to the pitcher because the hitters aren't familiar with him, or vice versa? But I mean, certainly somebody with his pedigree that would certainly turn some heads, and and that would also, you bring in somebody like that, that's going to fire up the clubhouse.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I guess it kind of comes down to what's the price. What would the price be to acquire somebody like that? And again, along the lines of strong opinions on players I've never seen for $1,000, please, Alex. How far into the prospect pool do you want to give up talent for?
Right. I mean, one of the reasons they didn't want to go longer or more on the Kimbrel Keuchel discussion was because they said they didn't feel like they wanted to accelerate their plan. Well, you're going to turn around a month later and say, yeah, we're ready to accelerate now. I mean, and maybe they are. Maybe if this team keeps winning 65% of their games, or even 55% of their games, if they start to come back to earth, maybe they say, maybe that does accelerate things. But, so far, it sort of felt like these two guys have stuck to their guns here and their plan, and it's working out. Now, what's interesting is, 2 seasons ago, last season, and then so far this season, which is the anomaly?
Right.
I'm still going to enjoy the season as long as I possibly can, or until it's no longer worth enjoying. But it does make you wonder. I mean, which is the real Twins team? If part of the beef with the Wild is that everybody except Dumba took a step backward this past season, it sort of feels like everybody on the Twins is taking a step forward this season.
Right, for sure, and that's
which I don't know how sustainable that is. So do you accelerate? Do you say it maybe isn't sustainable, but a player on a winning streak respects the streak, and so let's go get a Bumgarner? But I don't know. I mean, I kind of respect the fact that these guys have stuck to their guns to this point. Where a year ago I was like, God, why are they sticking to their guns? Come on, it's greater fool me. I don't know.
Yeah. Now, what I would really love to see, and I don't know if anybody like him is out there, but when Houston acquired Verlander, I mean, pretty much everybody was like, okay, that's a game-changing move right there.
Right.
And, and I don't remember when they got him, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, whenever it was. But point being, the thing that makes me nervous about Bumgarner is he would only be a rental.
Yeah.
So that's probably the only thing that would make me hesitant to go get a guy like that. I've heard the name Marcus Strohm from Toronto out there, and I believe he is signed through the end of next season, which, in the big picture, that looks, that's a little more palatable to give up a prospect. And then, if it worked out, then you could work on extending him instead of. I mean, Bumgarner is just strictly going to be a rental. I mean, that's
right.
There's just no doubt about that. But yeah, I would like to see him go for a frontline guy. And speaking of Max Scherzer, I've heard that name thrown around.
Yeah.
Which, 3 years ago, I'd be all in for that.
Right.
But what is he? He's like 35 years old.
Yeah. And he's got a broken beak.
His eye colors don't match. It's just, I don't know.
Yeah.
And he's got and he is still owed a pile of money. And there's still quite a bit of term on that contract.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I don't think the Twins are going to do something like that where they take on a big contract, on a guy in his age 35 season. I don't see that happening, which kind of gets me back to Bumgarner. He's only 29.
Right.
But again, there's almost zero chance that he's not a rental.
Yeah, although, are they set up to be a contender beyond this? The core of this team is pretty young. Could you entice him to stick around to sign for a few seasons? I don't know.
Yeah, if the price was right, I guess, right?
Yeah. All right, well, look, this Twins team is a blast. I love that we can have these debates about them, like you said, this far into the season, and talk about a contending team. So let's just keep it going. All right, let's move over to Funtown, or AKA the Minnesota Wild. I don't know. I assume that you read Mike Russo's article in The Athletic about Jason Zucker and his current situation, or several situations, heading into the draft weekend here. It certainly seems like a foregone conclusion that he's going to get traded probably this weekend. Do you agree?
It sure seems that way. I mean, considering, it definitely does.
Yeah. So given that, this is a huge moment for Fenton, obviously, and I think that the more I think about the Wild situation, the more it comes back to Leopold for me, because Fenton, for whether or not it was intentional, has ignited a rebuild. Period. Right? I mean, not getting more or different returns for the guys he traded so far this year essentially means that we're going to have a rebuild. But Craig coming in and Micah coming in and saying, no, we're going back to the playoffs next season. The risk is that short circuits your rebuild. And then we get into a Chuck Fletcher era scenario where we're trying to duct tape this thing together every season, and that's how you start trading draft picks and prospects to get veteran players who may or may not. You're either gonna get Eric Stahl 2 seasons ago, or you're not, and we know how that movie ends. So I'm a little skeeved out, worrying about the running of our draft table. And the nepotism that it sounds like is creating the personnel that's going to be overseeing it. You probably can't. The thing is, I guess, and this is what I want to ask you about, picking 12, assuming that he's not going to trade up. It sounds like he wouldn't trade up. Picking 12, it's less of a high risk pick in the sense that if you screw it up, if you screw up number 1, you end up with Brian Lawton, right?
Yeah.
But if you screw up 12, there probably isn't that kind of upside at the 12 spot. So it's creating the downside risk if you screw it up. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. For sure, it does.
So, how's your anxiety level heading into the draft?
I think I can sum that up in a couple of words from Russo's article on The Athletic from his sit-down with Paul Fenton.
Mm-hmm.
You tell me, Nick, I'll read this, and you let me know how you feel about this. And I'm quoting Russo's article. A lot has been made about Fenton giving his son, who is 33 and only finished his playing career in 2016, such responsibility early in his managerial career. But Fenton defended his son's experience and noted that before coming to Minnesota, P.J. Fenton scouted for the Edmonton Oilers for 2 years. I'll say again. Fenton defended his son's experience and noted that before coming to Minnesota, P.J. Fenton scouted for the Edmonton Oilers for 2 years. And then we go on to a testimony from the great Peter Chiarelli.
Yeah. Yeah. I
mean, does that really comfort any Wild fan?
Yeah, so just remind me, Peter Chiarelli, who at the time was the general manager of the Edmonton Oilers, is he still the general manager of the Edmonton Oilers, or no, not really? If that's the CV, that's. I mean, you throw around a word like nepotism, and that can be a fairly heady charge, but that's why you throw that word around in this case, is because this is his background, like that he's still young and inexperienced, and that Chiarelli liked him, like. Chiarelli, who's blown up not one but two. Chiarelli is the anti GM. He's no. It's not good that he's got Chiarelli's blessing. I'm sorry. It's just not. It's terrifying that's what made. And there's another line in that article where Fenton said that he couldn't have. There's some reason he said something about he couldn't have brought him into Nashville. He was not able to bring him into Nashville, and my interpretation of that was so that must mean that either Poyle was uncomfortable with that, given the relationship between father and son, or was uncomfortable with it because he didn't think the kid was worthwhile. Either way, no good answer there.
Right, and
this is a terrible move. Like. This is a ridiculous Paul Fenton trademark move.
Yeah, it kind of seems to be to this point, and I've heard Russo say on subsequent Russo-Suhan show podcasts that Fenton has made moves that have been unpopular within the organization.
Yeah.
Now, just on the surface, I give him credit for that because, like you, I firmly believe the biggest problem in the Wild organization starts in the owner's suite.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm on board with the general manager making moves that don't necessarily align with what the owner wants, but I don't have a lot of faith that the guy that's in the GM chair is the guy that knows the best course for this franchise. And I would further say that if the guy in the GM chair is making moves that contradict what the guy in the owner chair wants, I got a pretty good idea which one is going to outlast the other.
Yeah. 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 I mean, you look at this roster right now, and granted, it won't be the roster that we start the season with, probably, but I guess what I'm trying to say, I think there's going to be an opportunity for Mr. Leopold to reevaluate his general manager and whether or not he wants him to continue to be his general manager at some point in the next 10 months.
Is there any owner in any prominent pro sports franchise who has his hands in the day-to-day operation and in the personnel moves that's actually a successful franchise.